Hey everyone, welcome back to my shop. So, we've got a race in about 2.5 months that I can enter the MR2 Spyder in. And before I do that, I want to evaluate the axle situation. So, if you remember a couple of videos ago, right up here, I used TCS's second generation axles that are designed for swap into a naturally aspirated chassis with a turbo transmission to swap into here with some simple modifications. You could just go look at the video if you want to see the details on that. The end result is the 2AR FXE that we've got in here that makes about 260 at the crank. We still melted down an axle, but I want to point out this isn't a fault with the TCS axles. Don't consider that issue. Nobody else is having these issues. What I want to check today is, did I screw something up? Because if you remember in that video, I completely disassembled it. Or is it just... It's possible that I'm actually going to have to lift this car. My axles might be too flat. The angle is just so close to zero. It's actually sits at about 5 degrees, but then with the big stupid wing on top, it squats a little bit at speed, and I don't know what that angle is because I don't have a suspension height sensor, but I suspect it's getting awfully close to zero the faster we go. So we're going to take the right side axle. It survived the entire race, so I want to see, is it looking like, you know, it just lasted a little longer, but it's still on its way to melting down like this? And here's the, you know, the cage, by the way. The cage didn't survive either. Or is it an assembly error, you know? Maybe I didn't put enough grease in there. So, yeah. Join me. We'll pull that axle out, and we'll examine it. One quick thing before we get into this. So I got an email, actually it was a couple weeks back, from somebody, and it started like, it's unfortunately like a lot of emails that I get. It started, you know, talking about this, what I'll shorten as a permanent Jackstands project for life, kids, whatnot reasons. And those emails usually end up in somebody saying, hey, can I bring my car to your shop? Can you finish the swap for me? Or can you just do the swap for me? And I'm getting ready to type the reply. You know, as you guys can see in here, this is a small shop. I don't actually do customer installs in here. This is just all working on my cars. And the goal here is to make parts that I can sell to you guys and make it easier for you guys to do these swaps yourselves. So I'm getting ready. My fingers are practically on the keyboard getting ready to type this. And that's when the email just takes this sharp right turn. And it turns out where he goes with this is he says that his brother, Jeremy, has a 3rd gen MR2 that he's doing a 2AR swap on, and he's already bought all my parts and everything, and he's in the middle of that swap, and he actually put that project aside to put his brother's Del Sol together, and you can see the car right here. And I don't care that it's a Honda. That's awesome. It's awesome that somebody, you know, helps somebody get a car off the Jackstands. And I want to do something. You know, the truth is he's already bought all my parts, so I can't do anything in that sense. But what I thought of is these shirts here that I wear in the shop that have my Frankenstein Motorworks logo and big on the back and then small on the front. They're a little expensive to produce because there's just so many colors on them. But I'm in need for some extra ones, so I ordered one in Jeremy's size. And Jeremy, it's going to take a couple weeks for me to get that, but that will be in the mail to you free of charge as soon as I can. Just as a way to say, you know, thanks for being awesome. And hopefully you get that 2AR swapped Spyder done soon so you can show them what a real properly fast car is. All right, so let's get to the actual work for today. So first thing we got to do is remove the axle. According to the analytics, you guys actually seem to enjoy the time lapses. So let's cue some music and do a time lapse. And if you don't want to watch a time lapse, I've put chapters down there and you can just skip to wherever you'd like, skip to where we're talking about the results. All right, let's get to it. So here's the end result. This, by the way, is the axle that has failed, so we'll talk about this in a second. This is the axle I just took apart. So the nice thing to note here is, if we look in here, there's really only one spot that was getting really hot. And you can see it looks like it's touching right there. And that's actually on the race, the cage. And if you look at the cage, you can see there's a corresponding spot right there. And it's there at every, it's there 6 times. So that's interesting because this fits in there. There shouldn't be that interference. But if you look down at the actual races, they're nice and smooth. Obviously there's some wear if you look there, but this thing is good to go. I think reassembling this axle is going to be nice. If you look at the grease that came out, this is the stuff that came out of the outer. It's definitely black, but if you spread it thin enough, you can see some hints of red. And just for reference here, let's see. This is what it started like. So I think the answer for this one is it's good, but it's going to need just a little bit more cooling. So I'm going to see what I can do about providing some, airflow through there. The inner on that side, so this on the left side here, this is perfect. If you remember when we put this together, there was a minor issue. It wasn't an issue because these CVs aren't designed for this axle, but we were not quite centered on the joint, and you can see that, the wear marks are more to one side, but they're still well within the races. Same thing with the outer race. You can see it was just riding a little bit further out. Not a problem at all, though. And the balls, they are, they're still nice and shiny. No issues there. So the one issue that I did come up with, if you look at these are the breathers that I had. These are collapsed. I can't run air through this anymore. So I'm thinking this, I vented the boots and that helped a lot, but I think this is still part of the problem. So I picked up some tiny little brass tubes. You might not even be able to see it on camera there, but these are hollow. And these, when the whole thing gets hot, won't melt and, close. So I think with this, still running this CV2 grease here from Redline, this seems to have helped. I think this solution is going to work. Now, if we look at the other side, oh, and actually, yeah, before I leave this, because of the wear on this now, I expect that this axle will never get quite as hot as it did last time. So this axle, I bet, will last a good long time now. And I'm really looking forward to that because I'm tired of replacing these things. And just a review of that. So the inner joint on the other side, you see it got a little hot. Now, the difference between this inner and that outer, it's possible that this joint was a little bit tighter, but more importantly, this joint here is fully shrouded by the transmission. I think it's just not getting as good of airflow, whereas that one's kind of hanging out. It's behind the engine, so it's not directly in the airflow, but there's not nearly as much heat around it, whereas the transmission is sitting there covering almost 180 degrees, maybe even a little bit more. And this, the motor's just on the side of it, getting more ventilation. So I do think this is probably still good to go. The balls are slightly discolored. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sacrifice this one to test the hardness on these balls, make sure that they're still hard. but they should still be good. And then that means I won't be able to reuse this joint, of course, but I'll know for next time. And then, of course, for those that missed it last time, this is the outer that did fail. It just went into nuclear meltdown mode, so not a whole lot to say about that. I mean, once the grease leaves, all bets are off. So, yeah, I mean, there's still a question, right? Did the grease leave because this collapsed and then we destroyed the boot? Or did that collapse because it got too hot and then the whole joint fell apart? So, either way, for now, let's put this axle back together using these, and we're going to put that back in the car, and I'll get to the other side. I'll make a new axle for it off camera. Car's back together, and frankly, I wish the results were clearer than they are. As we saw, the inner joint is perfect on this side, so that leads me to believe that on this side, the only difference is cooling, and you know, you can't discount potentially assembly error, so maybe that's why this one discolored a little bit. But keep in mind, the inner joint on this side only discolored a little bit. The one here was perfect. The one on the outside on the left completely burned up, and the one on that side, the balls were still hard. They were slightly discolored, and it looked like it had touched the the cage had touched the outer CV half, not the race part, but you saw it in the video. So where does that leave us? Well, if I think about how the car goes around the track, road courses are clockwise. So you've got a lot more right turns. And particularly, Gingerman Raceway, which is the last track we went at, has a, what is it, 5, 6, 7, I think it's corner 8, is a really long carousel. You can see it right here. And you're just kind of sitting there hanging at like 0.8 Gs for several seconds, and what I think is happening is, you know, obviously that's making the car shift over, and the 5-degree angle is being lost on this side, so the body's dipping. So I think I'm finally going to have to give in. I think I'm going to take the suspension and I'm going to raise it by, let's say 3/8 of an inch, 10 millimeters, and we'll see what that does. That'll add quite a bit of angle to the shafts, and you know, since I don't have anything adjusting the roll center, it'll actually improve the roll center also, which will be nice. But it does raise the center of gravity, so it's a toss-up. I think between that and these new axles, I hope to finally have this problem solved. So, that's it for this. But I've got something else to show you guys. Check it out. Do you recognize this? Oh, that's a strange noise. It's a 2GR, but it's not just a 2GR. You can see the plastic valve covers here. It's a 2GR FKS. So this is the next generation of the 2GR, the one that's currently in production. And yeah, I mean, this particular motor, it's got 10,000 miles on it. It's out of a Sienna, but it has at least one bent connecting rod. I don't know if it'll be salvageable or not, but first thing we're going to do is we're going to open it up and we're going to see if it's salvageable. And if it's not, I mean, it'll still be fun to explore what the differences are in this motor. You know, there's some interesting differences right up front here. All of this sound deadening. I wonder how much quieter that car actually feels than the other 2GRs. Not that it would matter in the swapped application. In fact, I'd probably just remove these to let the heat escape the block a little bit more. But yeah, different oil cooler package. Not that I think it's different in any notable way. But other than that, yeah, the oil cooler still appears to be on the mid pan. And let's see, what else? Obviously, these exhaust ports would lead nicely to a turbo. Now, see these rails right here? It's direct injected. Good or bad, that depends on your perspective. It does make things more complicated, though. It does have this, which is a camshaft-powered vacuum pump. Tells you something about this motor. Probably won't have a whole ton of vacuum when it's sitting that idle. Another thing that I can tell from the outside, right here, the runner length TVIS system is actually vacuum powered instead of an electrical solenoid like it used to be. I bet that's a reliability issue because the other ones did have some issues. Not a whole ton of issues, but they did have some issues. They've also added fuel pressure sensors. Sensor one, though the rail is connected together, so probably for a little bit more accurate fueling. What else is going on with this thing? Oh, yes, we should. Give me a second. Okay, well, that was unexpected. I thought I was going to give the good news. It might still be good news. With this fully against the block here, there's a space of probably about 4 millimeters on this one and maybe 6-7 millimeters on the bottom one. At this point, I don't know if the issue is, well, here, let me take this back off. At this point, I don't know if the issue is that these are further out or these are further in, but it looks like the alignment is the same, which means that this one probably also won't fit. The good news is, oh wow, actually. Yeah, let me throw this bolt in here. The good news is somehow we're actually clearing that, just barely, to the point where you might even have to install this connector before putting the motor mount on. But there's that depth difference. So hopefully these two down here are at the same depth and it's these ones here that are further in, because at that point all we need is some spacers and the motor mount will work in either application. And if we look at this piece, we see again, it looks like it's probably the same bolt spacing up here, but it looks like this is the thin casting again, not the thick one that Toyota intends to suspend the motor from. On the RAV4s, where they do suspend the motor from this spot, this casting is almost twice the thickness, along with a different bolt pattern here to make it more compatible with the forces in that direction. So, yeah, that's interesting. I guess we can check the other side. Actually, I was wrong. The piece I tested against earlier, that was actually off of a 2AR. This is, yeah, by the way, did you know I make a flywheel for the 2GR? And conveniently, it looks like it fits the 2GR FKS also. So, same part, 2GR FE, 2GR FKS. And you know, what other flywheel has, you know, that neat little logo on it? By the way, there's a link right here if you want to buy one of these. So let's see, what else are we looking at? This right here looks like they moved the timing assembly outside of the motor. I hate when they do this. These are never as reliable, but here we are. It's not a super tight fit here, but I just checked. It is tight on the bolts. There's maybe only 1 degree back and forth. So I do expect that over time, these, especially unfortunately ones with manual transmissions, which is not really a concern of Toyota, is right here. This will catch some grit, some metallic grit, and eventually it'll have a problem reading the sensor. Won't be hard. All you got to do is take that bolt off and this shield here if you've got it, and pull that sensor out, clean it off, put it back in, and you should be good to go. So it's more of an annoyance than a problem, I'd think. Yeah. So stay tuned. I don't know if it's going to be the next video or further down the line, but we will take this thing apart to see if it's salvageable. And even if it's not, it'll be a fun learning experience. So yeah, have yourselves a good evening, and we'll talk to you guys later.